This section covers carriage lots in section 12.10.4 of the Denver Zoning Code. Carriage lots are pieces of land surrounded on four sides by alleys, typically found in the northwest area of the city, with some in the Park Hill neighborhood. Until 2010, carriage lots were limited to vehicle parking and garages. In 2010, those rights were expanded to allow an accessory dwelling unit use and an accessory garden use. The goal of the changes in the bundle is to simplify and clarify carriage lot standards and to advance equity in how the Denver Zoning Code treats residents. This is one of many places in the code where the bundle removes a requirement that the permit be personal to the applicant. Those requirements are a symptom of an attempt to regulate the who instead of the what and the where of development and land use. The revisions expand the allowed uses by removing the requirement that a structure on a carriage lot be accessory to a dwelling on the surrounding block. That means that a single unit dwelling can now be a primary use on a carriage lot as well as an accessory use. Next, we removed the requirement that the owner have to have their primary residence on the surrounding block. And by requiring that any single unit dwelling follow the standards for the detached accessory dwelling unit building form, we are maintaining the density, structure size, footprint, and height that are allowed for those structures. That means they haven't changed from the previous code version to today. The zoning permit with informational notice process is still applicable to the development of a carriage lot. So that means that when an application for development is received, a written notice and a posted notice are required, and the zoning administrator must take into account all comments received in making their decision. Finally, in the adopted bundle, the requirement that the zoning permit be personal to the applicant has been removed. In the code, this is what those changes look like. This section has been reorganized with a lot of new content. Starting with A here, the text in red shows that a single unit dwelling is now allowed as a primary use on a carriage lot, whereas before, only accessory uses were allowed. B states that no more than one primary single unit dwelling use is allowed on a single carriage lot. So that means that even in a TU zone district, a carriage lot may only have a single unit dwelling. No more than one urban garden primary use is allowed on each zone lot on a carriage lot. C states that the use limitations are applicable as they're shown in the use and parking standards table for the applicable zone district. And in D, it exempts urban gardens from providing minimum vehicle and bicycle parking. Here in E1, under Building Forms for Allowed Primary Uses, it states that the detached ADU building form must set the standards for a single unit dwelling primary use on a carriage lot, with limited exceptions in 12.10.4.4. For the urban garden primary use, no primary building forms are allowed on a carriage lot. However, any structures that serve the garden shall be secondary and incidental, and shall follow either the general or minor detached structure building forms. In terms of accessory uses, we've maintained the keeping or off-street parking of motor vehicles inside a completely enclosed structure as an accessory use allowed on a carriage lot. Number 2, the ADU accessory to a primary single unit dwelling use, and an unenclosed accessory garden use. Those have been existing accessory uses that have been allowed, and we've added 2 categories of accessory uses here. Number 4 is for accessory uses permitted in the zone district for a primary single unit dwelling. However, this excludes the ADU and child care home accessory uses. This means that a primary single unit dwelling and an accessory dwelling unit cannot be located on the same carriage lot. And finally, those accessory Uses permitted in the zone district for a primary urban garden use can also be allowed on a carriage lot. The use limitations have been relocated to this section. Item B1 points users to the use limitations for ADUs, which are found in section 11.8.2 of the DZC. Item B2 states that an ADU use is not allowed on a carriage lot when a single-unit primary dwelling has been permitted on the same zone lot. The bottom line here is that you cannot have a single-unit dwelling along with an accessory dwelling unit on a carriage lot. Only one dwelling unit is allowed on a carriage lot. And finally, Item C states that accessory parking is allowed, but the vehicle shall only be utilized by other conforming primary uses located on the surrounding block. The slide relates to building coverage. I'm showing that here, although there's been no change, but I just want to highlight that although building coverage has increased or decreased for many of the primary single-unit and two-unit dwelling building forms in other parts of the code, there has been no change to building coverage for carriage lot development. And finally, the DADU building form standards apply, as shown in number 5, except for the gross floor area limit and limitation to accessory uses. Lastly, this section, 1210.4.5, is where we've removed the requirement that the permit be personal to the applicant, which was previously in Item C. Item D also required that the applicant execute an agreement agreeing to terms and conditions set by the zoning administrator. That's been removed because approval of the permit is not contingent on a separate agreement, and the zoning administrator has the ability to apply conditions to an approval of carriage lot development.